The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
The Dice Tower, episode 574.
Relaxing games.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom and Suzanne try valiantly to pronounce some of their latest game titles. They discuss Tom's recent trip to Iceland, Geoff recharges his mana, and some questions from the mailbag spark discussion on flavor text, best practices for starting a board game meetup, and board gaming's reliance on geek culture. Also, Tom attempts to eat more game pieces, and Tom and Suze zone out with their top 10 relaxing games. I'm Eric Summerer, and here are your hosts, the zen and calm of board gaming, Tom and Suzanne.
I have to say, there's something about zen. You know, for me, zen is Lush. The store Lush. When I go in, is it Lush, is it called?
Really? Yeah, with all the bath goods and stuff? Are you a Lush fan, Tom?
Well, I am, except for their prices. Their prices are really expensive.
Oh, they're super. But it's all like organic and ethically sourced and made, and so it's a feel-good product.
That's not why I go in. It's because it's brightly colored and smells good. But yeah, that's my thing. I really do like that sort. I don't know why, but yeah, I
feel like I just learned about you here a little bit.
Yeah, that's my biggest weakness, I think, when it comes, like, we'll go to the mall, and I'm like, I'm not buying anything at the mall. Malls are too expensive. Why are we even at the mall? Oh, there's Lush. Never mind. See y'all later.
Nice.
Alrighty, so hey, everybody. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And we normally are on different halves of the podcast, but since Eric and Mandy ran off the Grand Con and left us... Okay, I can't even say that. I was going to say they left us back home alone, but it was mostly just Suzanne. I went to Iceland.
Oh, God. Ouch. Ouch. For reals. Yeah, I can't wait to hear all about Iceland. That just... What? Yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, here's the thing. So, first of all, I'll talk about this briefly, but Iceland had a convention called Midgard, and it's like a geek convention, so it has cosplay and... comic books and board gaming, but the board gaming was completely full the whole time. So look, I think there was maybe 12 to 1,500 people there at any given point. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to both the stores that were there, the Nexus and then, I can't pronounce the other one, but it basically means gaming friends or gaming buddies or something to that effect. But both stores were amongst the best game stores I've ever seen in my life. So if you're ever in the capital of Iceland, go to both of these gaming stores. They're both fantastic. But anyhow, so it was just basically open gaming. You just sat down and play games. There wasn't any game booths at all, actually. It was all the booths were like just, there was some Vikings attacking each other with swords. You can go watch that for a while, which was fun. Incidentally, every Viking sold in the stores in Iceland, every single Viking statue and everything, they all have horns. But just saying.
Historical accuracy.
I think it's because of the tourists, but I bought one anyway, and I'm sticking it on my shelf. And if people give me garbage, I'll be like, I don't know, it's for a guy from Iceland.
If Iceland has it, why not you?
So it was only a 2-day con. It was Saturday and Sunday, and they started at 10 in the morning and went till 10 at night. So 12 hours, and we really had fun. I just basically just kept teaching different games and would just grab another game and teach it to folks, and I had a lot of fun. I have to admit, though, even as fun as that was, though, the day after Monday was the best day because they took us around and showed us various things in Iceland, like a geyser and inside a volcano and this gigantic waterfalls. And I apologize. I'm not trying to rub any of that in, but it was like one of the
You're not trying to, but you're comfortable doing so.
It was just so... I don't know. But it was great.
It sounds amazing.
And it was so neat because being in Iceland, the people there, everyone speaks English. They have their Icelandic language, but everyone speaks English, and they speak it so well, like better than Canadians. I'm just kidding. Mandy's not on the show, but I'm not actually kidding because it's true. But it was just amazing because usually when I see people who speak English, they speak it, but you can tell, right? But they were using idioms and sarcasm and plays on words, and I was very impressed. They spoke English better than I did. So,
well,
but
no comment.
I had a fantastic time. It was great. I would love to go again. If you're ever in Iceland, you're not going to be hurting for games.
Oh, that sounds. I am super envious, and I'm envious of you, but I'm also happy for you. That sounds like a phenomenal experience, and I gotta go check your social media feeds to see if you posted any photos. What you're describing sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, I didn't yet. But we're going to put together some videos and stuff of it. I took a lot of video when I was there.
Oh, awesome.
So Z will be putting together a blog on that. And so that was fun. But let's talk about games because that's why you guys are here. One of the games that I played there was Newfoundland, which is a Z-Man game. And it's about discovering, Newfoundland and sending people over. It is a most assuredly you've seen this before style game. But there are some neat concepts to it where you have these ship cards, and the ship cards have different stats on them. And you will stick these ship cards underneath different areas. And if I stick it under this one, it goes out and explores. If I stick it on this one, I can ship goods and score victory points that way. And so on and so forth. You have different spots to put these ships on. That all sounds well and good, and it's some neat concepts, but I don't think they took it far enough. At the end of the day, I kind of just shipped some goods and got victory points, and I didn't feel like I did anything different or special in this one. It just felt connect the dots, wasn't that exciting, and I'd be like, ooh, I feel like the game's starting to move, and it was over. It was too long and yet too short at the same time. I didn't feel like it gave me enough to do, and it kind of like, is this game going to be over soon? And yet at the same time, I never felt like I got enough ships to... it's so mediocre that I'll probably never mention it again. I know it sounds so negative, but 10 years ago, I would have been much happier with this game, but I just found it okay. That's Newfoundland.
Interesting. That reminds me of how I felt about Lowlands. And I know Eric had a fairly different opinion on Lowlands than I did, but I felt kind of similar how you felt like I've seen it before, and it didn't come together in a unique way that compelled me to put it over the top of other titles I already had in my collection. Well, I am really excited about Spirits of the Wild. Now, Tom, you haven't had a chance to play this yet, right?
No, we were just talking before we started recording. I haven't even seen this before. It's a Mattel game, and I'm looking and I see a bowl of jelly beans.
Don't eat them.
Are they jelly beans?
Don't eat them. They're not jelly beans. They're spirit stones, of course, but
Skittles.
They look like candy. So for sure, this is a 2-player only game, and it's basically limited action selection, and you're collecting. You have these little boards with holes punched in it for different, animals. So you'll have the salmon, the owl, the beaver, whatever. And it's just set collection with these really neat looking stones that are plastic, and they've got one side is real smooth and one side has some texture. They're really nice plastic stones, and you get this beautiful little plastic bowl to hold them in too. The component quality in this game is awesome. You also get this little rubber plastic coyote that can block an opponent's space, but it's another plastic component that's really high quality. It has a really cool look to it. And basically what's going to happen is you're using these action cards. Each player gets an identical set of action cards, and it lets you take a stone out of the bowl or add stones to the bowl or things like that. And when you use a card, you flip it over, and it's not available to you anymore until you take the action that lets you refresh your cards. And it works quite well in this game. There are a couple of special actions that'll boost you that are based on some other kind of animals like bison and what have you. And ultimately, you keep on going until up to 5 of these clear special stones that they have in the game are out, and the game ends. And what you're doing is you're set collecting these stones on your board. So maybe in the owl, it wants 3 different pairs in the same color. Or in the beaver, you want 3 of a kind of a color and then a pair of a color. Or maybe one of the animals has one of each color, or one of the animals has all of the same color, and you get sliding scale scoring. So you're just using these actions to take stones out of the bowl or exchange stones and things like that, timing how you refresh it, and collecting points. Now, there are these clear stones that trigger the end game, but there's a special spot on each animal, and when you place that clear stone, one, it doubles the points for that animal. So if you're going to get 6 points, you're going to get 12. But it also shuts that section down. So there's a little bit of play there sometimes about, well, I got to grab that clear stone before my opponent gets it, but then I'm not going to be able to score more points. But, kind of balancing what you want to do there. It's got some interesting little decisions going on. I love this game. It's $15. It's very affordable, 2-player, excellent quality components, really intriguing, light, but fascinating gameplay. It's just a complete winner for me. The one complaint I've heard about it is some people don't like the end game trigger where you're not quite sure when that 5th spirit clear stone is going to come out. I personally didn't have a problem with it, but that's really the biggest criticism I've heard of the game, and that's totally surmountable in my opinion. So if you like 2-player games, Spirits of the Wild from Mattel, it is a real winner. I highly recommend it.
Man, I'm going to have to check this one out. It does look really good, and I do like candy. So I know that's not candy, but any game that looks like it has a bowl of candy can't be that bad.
I agree wholeheartedly. And hey, you can always replace them with Skittles if you lose the pieces.
No, we've talked about this before. Could you make candy into a game and then basically say you can't, if you eat it, you have the opportunity to eat it, but if you do, you lose points. And I think I would be incorrect.
Yeah.
All right, before I talk about the next game, I need to listen to a video real quick from Ella Loves Board Games. She does a video thing. Okay, so hang on. So it's
how to pronounce it.
Teotihuacan.
And the last syllable is pretty
Con.
easy to remember.
All right, Teotihuacan. I think I got that right. Does that sound right?
No.
I don't care if it sounds right or not, but I'm trying.
Okay, so future Eric here. I couldn't let that go. Teotihuacan is how you pronounce this word. The video from Ella Loves Board Games is very entertaining and a lovely tutorial. And if Tom had, paid attention, Teotihuacan is how you say the name. Okay, I'm going to go back to the editing booth now. Bye.
This is a new big box game from NSKN Games. And in this game, you are building that word I already said, which is like a giant pyramid in the middle of the table. Have you played this one, Suzanne?
I have. I've played it once.
Man, it is good.
Yep.
Now, here's the problem with the game. The game does have, I feel like, a small problem, is that setup, if you don't know what you're doing, setup is such a bear. Because the game comes with this modular board and modulars for this and modulars for this. And, in fact, you can kind of shove all those in the box because you can just play with what's on the board to begin with. And the rules aren't super clear at the beginning. You can do that, and halfway through, they're like, if you want, you can just start with this stuff. I'm like, oh, yes, please. I want to do that instead. And it's a giant rondelle. This is a huge just rondelle that you're moving around this board, these spaces, and you have different dice that you're going to be moving around. And when you move a die, you can either get some cocoa or you can spend cocoa to take an action. Apparently everyone in this area eats chocolate for their food. I was actually a little confused on that. Can you even eat cocoa?
You can. I mean, it's edible. Until you process it, you may not. I mean, American palates certainly may not enjoy it that way.
Yeah, like it's not good for sugar, right? I don't know. Anyway, so in this game, it's really intriguing because each of these spots has different actions, and as you take these actions, your dice get better. They start at like level 1, but they can go all the way up to level 6, in which case they ascend and you get some bonus and they go back to level 1 again. But who cares? Because you are getting materials and then you are building with some really nice tiles. You're building this pyramid in the middle. You are decorating it. You are getting points in various ways, and there's a little tech tree. Some people are calling this a spiritual successor to Tzolk'in.
Because the designer is the same.
Okay. I'm thank you for clearing it up. I probably should have known that. I was like trying to, and I guess they're in the same
setting,
part of the world, in the same setting, but they really don't feel the same. Tzolk'in is about placing workers on moving gears and knowing the best time to pull them off. This one is moving dice around a rondelle and getting things. I don't know. I feel like they're very different games.
Totally agree.
Like, I like Tzolk'in, but I really like this one, Teotihuacan. I highly recommend. I think it's coming out of Essen. I really think this is going to be a big hit. It looks more complex than it is. It's not. I got Z to play it, just pointing it out, and he liked it.
Shut the front door.
I know. And he's like, because when it came in, he's like, this is what I'm interested in.
Nice.
I said, all right. So I went and played it, and I was like, Z, this is not your style. Just he's like, well, let's try it anyway. So I was like, all right. And then he said he liked it. So I feel like he was either lying, but the fact is it's not as complex as it looks.
For sure.
The board looks like there's a gazillion things to do on it. You're like, oh, look at all these pieces everywhere. And especially if you do play with the randomized board. This game has what I call, I need to come up with a good term for it, like too much randomization.
Huh.
I guess what I mean is, like, you could pick the spaces that all these spots are on the board, the rondelle. Mm-hmm. I don't think you need that. I think I think the game's fine as is. Now, maybe, I guess if you play it 20 times, you'd be like, I need to change some things up. I get that, but having all these big boards on the board, I think it feels a little cluttery in how it looks.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think for people who people I know who play Tzolk'in play the heck out of that game. And if they get into it with this game as well, I think that they'll eventually appreciate that randomization. But I'm glad to hear you liked it, because certainly in my single play of it, I developed a big crush on this game, and I got to demo it basically at a convention, and so I'm really excited to get a copy of this because I share your feelings on it.
I also liked how it scaled. It really scaled well.
Okay.
I played with 2, 3, and 4, and I thought it played well with all those.
Nice.
So now I am a sucker for dice in games. So there's some of that, I like the whole upgrading your dice thing. That just makes me happy as you get it. And then I made jokes about the dice going to some heaven, or I'm not quite sure where the dice were going, but it's really good. So Teotihuacan. Never mind.
So close. So close.
I can't even pronounce your next game.
And I can't either. But less maybe historical context for this one. So I have been playing Scarabaya, or Scarabaya, or Scarabya, Scarabya. What?
Scarabian Nights.
Like Scarabian Days. Anyway, Scarabaya from Blue Orange Games, and this is a Bruno Catala and Ludovic Montblanc game. So a little bit of design cred in there. And this game, what first drew it to me is it uses polyominoes. It uses these Tetris-like shaped pieces. So that's what first caught my attention. There is a theme to the game. There's scarabs on the board, and you're basically trying to collect these scarabs by penning them in. So the board itself is made of 4 modular tiles. And so you can kind of move them around and twist them and shape them on the board, so the game board has variability in it. And then you use these polyomino tiles to place on the board to kind of corral the scarab icons that are on the board. And when you fully enclose a little section of board, I think it's 4 or more, or 4 or less. It's 4 or less. It's one, yeah. When you enclose a section that has a scarab, you get to score that scarab. And the scarab counts for points for as many squares in the enclosed area. So if you close in a little scarab on its own, it's worth 1 point. If you enclose it in a section that has 4 squares, it's worth 4 points. If you have 2 scarabs in a 4-point enclosure, then you get 8 points. So obviously you're trying to manipulate for that kind of scenario where you have more scarabs in a large area. And essentially this is one of these games that you could theoretically play with just about as many players as you have players for, because there's 12 tiles and each tile has a matching card. So you shuffle up these cards and flip it over. It's similar to number 9. You shuffle up the cards, you flip over the top one, and then everybody places the same piece. And it's just the personal decisions that they make where they put them on the board. Everybody sets up their board in the same way at the beginning of the game too. So you're playing the exact same game, and it's really your personal decisions that end up impacting how much you score. Plays super duper quickly. It has those satisfying tile placements that personally I really, really love polyomino gameplay. And, it's solid. It's a really solid game. I enjoy these kinds of games. I would even say I'm biased towards them. So I think I enjoyed it more than a few of the people that I played with who were kind of like, it was a game. It's definitely a game where you have to make sacrifices. You're just never going to be able to get it all. And so you're going to have to cover up some of these scarabs, even though you don't want to. So picking which ones you cover up and when, I think that feels like some interesting choices during the game. And I think it's always fun to see how differently people choose to play as they go. Even though you all have the exact same setup and you're playing with the exact same pieces, boards always look so different at the end of the game. And those are things I really love. Now, I will say, component quality from cardboard quality and stuff like that was totally fine. Where I had an issue was with the colors on the board, and a number of people noticed this. The scarabs are printed on the tiles, and depending on which color board you have, there's like orange, green, and there's a light blue and a dark blue. It can be very difficult to see these scarab icons. I have decent eyesight. I'm not colorblind. I have 20/20 vision. And even I was having a hard time picking them out on the board, which is just a little bit of extra strain you don't need. I really wish that had been different as far as how they were showing up. But other than that, Scarabaya plays quick, nice little tile placement game with polyominoes. I think it's a solid game.
See, I'm not convinced. You said that it was nice components. I'm not convinced on that. I mean, I haven't played it, but I remember looking at the box. I thought, this kind of flimsy. This just doesn't look as good as much of Blue Orange Games stuff.
I think it was fine. I think it was standard. I wouldn't say they were great quality, but the tiles were probably, 2 millimeters thick. And it has these plastic mountains that there's slots in the cardboard where they clearly go, and those are blockers that you have to work around with your tiles. And they're nice little molded plastic pieces that go in there. So you're right. I wouldn't say anything's exceptional about it, but I think they're decent. I think it's fine.
All right. Well, I still haven't played this one yet because obviously this is a Catala game, and so Z grabbed it and played it. He kind of gave it an okay review. He said it wasn't bad. He just said it was okay.
Well, that's about where I'm at.
The next one I want to talk about is Henhouse Havoc.
Excuse me?
Henhouse Havoc.
Oh, my goodness.
This is about, literally, you have some hen houses, and you are shooting missiles at other people's hen houses. Essentially, what this is it's 4-player Battleship.
Oh.
But it's 4-player Battleship, and all the pieces have special abilities. So if you blow, like, one piece can shoot 3 spaces next to each other. Another piece can shoot 2 different spaces, but on 2 different players' boards. So as your pieces slowly get taken out, you can't use those special abilities. So you'll say, I'm going to shoot with this guy who can shoot, again, like 3 spaces next to each other. This guy can shoot, and if he hits you, he hits all the spaces next to that spot too. So they all have something different, and you'll sit there and go, I'll try to shoot with this one. That's the whole game. It is Battleship, 4 players, special abilities. And you know what? I like it. It's not a great game. It almost fits in that guilty pleasure style game. But I just like the special abilities that they have. And the game, as stuff gets blown up, starts going faster and faster because, well, you're blowing it up. It's pretty neat. It has some nice components. It's made by Ankama. They're best known for Crossmaster.
Yeah.
So they make those little, chibi guys. But this was a nice change of pace. That's Henhouse Havoc.
It looks cute. It's got these big old player shields. I mean, it looks cute. I like the art style. Right.
Yeah, it's hard to have big shields, like that without them falling over. But, yeah, it's fun.
Not a big deal. All right, there you go. Well, it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't get to work in a roll and write game of some kind. And so...
What?
I have been playing Roll to the Top. This is from Koali Games, and Koali's one of those publishers I just feel, in general, deserves more attention. I really like Koali Games. And hey, when Corné van Moorsel makes a roll and write, I'm going to play it. Roll to the Top, first of all, Roll to the Top uses polyhedral dice, which is super uncommon in roll and write games. So that immediately attracted me to it because you use
You no longer have to say anything.
You're done. Good. You get an 8-sided, a 20-sided, a 6-sided, a 4. You get the polyhedral set pretty much, and I think that is awesome. And there are a ton of different player sheets. Now, everybody plays with the same board or sheet each game, but there's a lot of variety in the box, and they're all either based on buildings or landmarks. So there's a sheet that mirrors the Eiffel Tower, and it's literally a picture of the Eiffel Tower with squares drawn over it. I will say the art style of the game is not my favorite, but it's functional. Let's see, they have like a pyramid board, and it's a pyramid with squares drawn over it, things like that. I think I kickstarted this game, that's how I have it, and there's like the Kickstarter special was a map of Africa. Anyway, so you get these you get a board, and it's just got a grid of squares or rectangles, and they are, some of them are off center and some of them line up well and things like that, and they just go up. It's basically a race game. The first player to finish and fill up the entire board wins the game. So it's a race. And the way you race up there is you use these polyhedral dice, and you're going to roll them, and then you fill in as many squares as you can with the values. Now, you can use each die individually, or you can combine them in any which way you want for any value that they can form. So if you roll 4 dice, you can add them up as 2 pairs and just fill in 2 squares. Or you can use each individual value and fill in 4 squares. But you always have to be equal to or higher than the value below. And that's where it kind of escalates and grows as you go up. So if I've got a 1 and a 4 next to each other, and there's a square on top of it, I have to write a 4 or higher in that. So you have to really be smart about how you're using your numbers low. If you get a high value early game, it can really make the game challenging for you. And, that's pretty standard fare. I'll admit, if that was the whole game, it wouldn't be as interesting to me. But where you really get me, along with these poly dice, is the dice selection. Because what's going to happen is you're going to roll these dice, and then there's another die that goes with it that says plus or minus or exchange. That die determines the next player will either add a die back or remove a die from the dice pool or exchange it. So you're changing the odds of getting certain values. And that is super interesting. As you're going around the table, and as players' boards evolve differently, and then they start making decisions about, I need lower numbers, so I'm going to get rid of that 20-sided die, or I need higher numbers, I'm going to get rid of that 4-sided die, that kind of thing. That dice selection as you're going around the table is super great with this game overall. So it doesn't necessarily look like a lot coming out of the box, but there's a lot of interesting gameplay here. I've played it solo. There's a website that you can play the game for free on if you're interested in trying it. And then we've just had fun playing in general. And that is Roll to the Top. And it's a really solid roll and write game from Koali.
So just clarify, you said there's polyhedral dice.
Yes. There's
I may have stopped listening after that point because I need this.
Yep, you do. It's a really good entry in the roll and write world, so I recommend it.
All righty. Well, let's listen to someone super smart now.
3, 2, 1,
Go! It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
I am a member of various game design groups online, and recently someone posted a question about terminology for their game. They noted that for an earlier game they'd done, they used thematic terms for common elements in the game. Victory points were fitness, money was called energy, attack strength was pressure, and defense was endurance. Then they said, quote, "This all fit in with the theme, but when I taught the game to players, they would usually replace the thematic words with the generic terms." Now, this does not surprise me. This is actually one of the things I teach to my students. If there's a general term for something that people are familiar with, use that. Don't try to force something new onto your players. Let me amend that. Force as little new stuff onto your players as possible. Now, once again, this goes back to the original sin of tabletop games, rules. Every game has a price of entry, which is learning a new rule set. And as we learn games, we are constantly trying to slot mechanisms and concepts into things we already know. That's why those of us who play lots of games find it easier to learn new ones. We have a bigger bank of examples that we can fall back on and use those when learning something new. That's also why sometimes experienced gamers can be more likely to mess up a rule when a game has a mechanism that is really, really close to another one you are familiar with, but has a twist. You're likely to miss the twist the first time you read the rules, unless the rules writer draws your attention to it. Now, another example. I'm currently reviewing a prototype for someone. You play a character and you get attacked. And when you take damage, you lose something that is represented by hearts. And when you lose all your hearts, you die. Now, I would call that health or health points. In this design, it's called life points. And I know that this isn't too far afield, but I keep tripping over it. I guess I've played too many video games, but if I have something called life points or lives, I assume I have more than one life, like Mario or Pac-Man. And when I lose all my hearts, I lose one life. A small thing, and I still obviously understand the game and its concepts, but it's a little bit of a hitch in the game experience. Anyway, I was thinking about all this and was wondering how a term that is common in games comes about and gets popularized. If there really isn't a common word for what your concept is, where can the name come from? And I got a little obsessed with the word mana and its associations with magic in games. Where does that come from? Now, for those of you not familiar with the term, mana is a magical resource that you have to expend to cast spells in many magic systems. It can be depleted, and if you run out of mana, you can't cast spells anymore. Well, it turns out that mana actually is a Maori word from New Zealand, or more specifically, Austronesian. It roughly translates as spiritual or magical energy that resides in all things, kind of like the Force, I guess. The word was first brought to the attention of the English-speaking world by Henry Codrington in 1891, who was a missionary to Melanesia. In his book, The Melanesians, he says, "The Melanesian mind is entirely possessed by the belief in a supernatural power or influence called almost universally mana." Now, in the 1940s and 50s, the study of religion and spirituality was moving towards a universalistic approach. There was a lot of writing and study about commonalities between different beliefs and myths, including Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which was published in 1949. And while Campbell didn't specifically refer to mana, other books of that time used the term as an example of this universality. Now, in 1967, science fiction writer Larry Niven wrote a short story called Not Long Before the End, which was later expanded into a novella titled The Magic Goes Away. This is a story about a world suffused with magical substance that is used up every time magic is cast. Niven called the substance mana, as he was enamored with Polynesian culture at the time. The story is set when the mana is just about all used up, and magic is getting harder and harder to perform, and how that affects the society. It has obvious parallels to non-renewable resources in our world. I actually read The Magic Goes Away in the early 80s, and was tickled to now learn that it was the popularizer of the term mana. It's a good book if you get a chance to read it. Now, the earliest example of mana being used in a game that I could locate is the 1989 computer game Dungeon Master. Before that, games had magic points, or MPs, but Dungeon Master specifically called it mana. And in 1993, Richard Garfield released Magic the Gathering, which enshrined the concept of needing mana to cast spells. The links to Larry Niven's work are clear in Magic, and there is actually an early card which is named after him, spelling his name backwards. Now, one final detail about mana. In 1995, Blizzard released the computer game Warcraft 2. While there was a green magical substance in the original Warcraft, it was unnamed. Warcraft 2 adopted the name mana and also changed the color to blue. Blizzard has used blue to represent mana ever since, a color identification which has carried over into other games as well. While Magic the Gathering still has different colors of mana, I think if you ask most gamers what color represents mana, they would say blue. Between World of Warcraft, Diablo, and all the other Blizzard games, mana being blue has been enshrined into gaming culture. So, that's the story of mana. Now, if you have a new concept in your game, please cast a wide net to find a great term for it. But if there's already an established term, just use it. Your players will thank you. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Well, I guess I'm not in the in, because if you asked me what color mana was, I would have thought it was green.
Really? I would have gone blue all the way. But I am totally on board with this don't force random stuff on players if you don't have to. I can't tell you how many times I'm going through a rule book and, well, I avoid rule books as much as I can, but when I go through rule books and I'm reading it and they put all these thematic details in it, and it just throws off my learning of the game. I'm fine with theme and thematic touches in games, but when it distracts from my ability to learn the game, it's awful. I really actively dislike it when thematic elements make it harder for me to learn a game. So I'm pretty much on board with that. Where Geoff lost me is how he says Mario. Mario? How do you say Super Mario?
Super Mario, but Jeff's right because he's smart.
Okay, so I need to change the way I'm saying Super Mario. Super Mario.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Jeff's wrong on that one. It's a me, Mario. So, yeah, I agree with you. I really hate when a game has, some weird terms, but at the same time, I don't know that I like using the same terms for everything. I don't know.
Sure, I think you're more into thematic games than I am in general, so I could understand that.
Yeah, but I also call all money dollars, which irritates some people.
Oh, really?
I try not to. I'll be like, this is 4 shekels, and that's 17 shekels, and you owe me $18. And they'll be like, Tom, is it dollars? Like, no. I meant shekels. I know, it's just easy to do. I don't know why. I would imagine that happens to everybody, though, that you tend to call it by whatever your currency in your home country is.
Yeah, I think where they really get me is when they call resources different things from the thematic. And this is actually something that makes total sense to name thematically. And on some level, I appreciate it. But I got to admit, most games that we play that involve resources that coincides with a colored cube or a colored token, it's not cinnamon, it's the brown cube. Oh. It's not saffron, it's the yellow cube. It's not.
Are we talking about Century again? Century always throws me off on this. I'm like, does anyone care what those are? They're brown cubes, blue cubes, whatever. It just isn't necessary for me, and it's shorter, it's easier, and it makes the game quicker to play because not everybody makes that instant mental connection between the color and the thematic element, and it slows the game. Oh, wait, which one was that one? Was that brown or was that red? And, just brown cube, red cube, and play the game and have fun. But that's because I'm insensitive to thematic elements. Alrighty, well, let's jump to some questions.
Tom.
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 Hey, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces?
Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Okay, so Wayne says he's been trying his hand at game design, and he listened to a review that we've done, and so he watched a video review of the game, said, hey, my game's not too similar, and so he designed his game. And now that he's farther in, he's like, ooh, they're like 60 to 70% the same. The theme's different, scoring's different, intended audience is different, but everyone's going to compare the core actions of the game. So he says the game is nearing completion. He's starting to look for a publisher. He feels his game is different. Does he have an obligation to mention this other game when pitching to publishers? Should I not bother publishing the game? Any moral advice?
Moral advice.
And Suzanne is going to answer.
I don't think there's a moral obligation to reference this other game. I think games like La Granja were really explicit in the rulebook. This game was clearly inspired by these 3 other games, and that was totally fine. The reality is, in board gaming, everything is iterative. There's very little raw innovation. So many games that we know and love borrow elements from other games. It's does every deck builder acknowledge Dominion? No, they don't. But deck building is just a thing that people borrow as a mechanism and pass along. So do you have a moral obligation? I don't necessarily think so, depending on, I don't, it doesn't call to me that way. What I would say is be prepared for those comparisons. You're going to be pitching to people who've played these other games that you've played and been inspired by or recognized similarities with, so they're going to recognize it too. So whether or not you're proactive and go, oh, I was inspired by this, be prepared for those comparisons and to be able to speak to how your game differs. And hey, sometimes comparisons are a good thing. It's a shorthand and it's a way to appeal. If you have an element that is somewhat similar to a really big hit game, that could be a selling point. My game is a little bit like this huge big hit game, but here are all the ways it's different. It could be a really helpful shorthand too to acknowledge it. So there's a couple different ways you can look at it, but I don't know about moral. I don't know, Tom. You're the morality expert, not me.
I don't know on this one because it's really hard to tell without knowing exactly how similar the games are. You say they're 60 to 70%, but maybe they're like 2% or 100%. You know what I mean? The percentages might be off. And if I played it and I said, what? This is Love Letter, obviously, with a few changes, then I think you have a problem at that point. That being said, we have some games that are very similar to each other that do get into the market, and even with some yelling, they still manage to get printed. We have games that are like 90% the same. A good example of that would be Insider and Werewords. Those games are really similar. We have deck builders. Suzanne mentioned deck builders. The initial ones were similar. Now they're pretty different. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly would think it's a bad idea to start with another game design and change it usually. Obviously, you're going to use some of the same stuff. That's just, you can't get around that. If your game is completely unique, well, then it's called the mind. But other than that, no, I mean, seriously, how many very unique games do we play? Almost none. You're going to have something in your game that's similar to other games. I would just be careful, but yeah, I think Suzanne said it best. Be prepared. You might not compare to other games. Other people are going to. All
right. Eric, not our Eric, I would assume.
It actually says that in the email. It says Eric, not Summerer.
Thanks for clearing up that confusion. Eric's asking, how essential is quote-unquote nerd culture to the board gaming industry? We see certain themes over and over again for different reasons, and they must sell. And board game media are often accompanied by other geek items like T-shirts, minis, cosplay, that kind of thing. But Eric says they're not interested in comic book heroes or fantasy or video games or tired tropes associated with board games. And does that make him an outlier in the game? And can the hobby survive without this reliance on geek/nerd culture? Does consistent use of these themes in association with board games limit the reach of the industry? And would more people be interested in the hobby if different interests were reflected in the theme? Do some people feel as if board gaming is a quote-unquote geek, and I'm adding the air quotes, the geek safe space to be defended from the outside world?
No. There, I answered the question. No, I mean, sure, there's a lot of geek stuff in our hobby, for sure, and there's a lot of reliance on geek-dumb. If you go to a convention, you'll see that, but there's also a lot of games like, Ticket to Ride is not geeky at all. It's about connecting trains. Like, almost all of Europe's games are not geeky, really. That's more of an American and, well, maybe French and Italian. But Germany, there's not very many geeky games from them at all. So I think the hobby can survive. At the same time, Eric says he's not interested in comic book heroes, generic fantasy, I don't know, video game characters, or many of the other tired tropes he associated with board games. I don't know if Eric and me could be friends. Comic book heroes are amazing.
He
I
lost
don't care
you,
about generic fantasy. But I want to go back to that comic book character thing again. No.
I would say, though, I think that expanding the themes that come into games is a positive thing and could help the hobby grow. I definitely think different themes can help draw in players that may not be attracted to comic book heroes, patchwork, or the Littlest Flower Shop, or whatever, or any kind of other. There's lots of different settings that you can put in games, and I think drawing in more players and bringing games with different thematic elements that could appeal to different potential players, I think is a good thing. I think hardcore gamers often are willing to overlook certain themes if they really like the game, and because they're already in the hobby, they're willing to try it anyhow. And you have to remember, board gaming existed in some form or fashion long before really the comic book heroes entered, or generic fantasy even. I mean, you think about family games and board games and Parcheesi and Life and Monopoly and all these games, they didn't have these, they didn't fit within that quote-unquote nerd culture, and the industry managed to grow and thrive from there. So we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, now we have some questions from Bill. Bill says he started a new gaming group a year ago. Things are going well. He's playing at a local coffee shop, and he wants to make the leap to hosting a monthly event at his house. So, question 1, game night or game day, which usually works better? And then I'm just going to quick go through the questions. And then 2, what's a decent time frame to put on a game day or game night? Currently, they're starting at noon and finishing at 5 or 6. And then 3, most of the people show up at the beginning and start in the short games, and people arrive. And then when everyone's there, you start things longer. Someone shows up after everyone's in the middle of a game, and he wants to make everyone happy. That's a whole. We'll come back to that one. Let's do the easy ones first. Game night or game day?
Whatever works for that group. Poll your group.
I'm assuming he must be talking Saturdays.
Sure.
Because I don't think you could do, or Saturdays or Sundays, I guess. You can't do a day during the week unless you're working with nurses or something.
I don't know. I have a regular game night on a weeknight, and so we play after work, and we may be a little tired, but we play. And then we do have game days on the weekend, and I would just poll your group. It sounds like you've grown a nice little steady group there. See what works for them, and try to schedule it around that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'd ask people too. I personally prefer game days on weekends because I'm more awake during the day than I am at night. I guess I'm just getting older. You hit 9 o'clock, I'm like, well, I think that's it. And some of the people are looking at me like, what's wrong with you? It's only 9.
Yeah.
And
Old
I'm like,
man
you're
vassal.
right. Why am I complaining? Okay, but yeah. And for time frames, for me, a good time frame, like our Tuesday night gaming, I get there around 6 and we go to 11 usually, so 5 hours. I really like that time frame. 5 hours feels good to me.
Yeah, that's about what my game evenings during the week ends up being, around 6 to 10 or 6 to 11 is about what we have. But when we do have game days on the weekend, man, we are going 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. I mean, we just go all day.
And I have that coming up Saturday. I'm so very excited. I love those big, long game days.
Me too.
Now, here's that other question, though. So everyone starts. They're playing games, and as one person shows up late, and so he's feeling bad. He'll leave the game he's in sometimes, start something short with them, but other times they just watch. What do you do in this situation? Do the needs of the many truly outweigh the needs of the few? In my opinion, I don't care that much. If I say we're starting at a certain time, if you're late and can't be there in time, then that is what it is. I'm not going to yell at you for being late, or maybe you couldn't make it earlier because of work or whatever. But at the same time, if you did not call ahead and say something to the effect of, "Hey, I'm going to be late. I'm not going to get there until 7," then I don't know what else to tell you. I don't think it's fun to ruin your own game night just to appease people. Now, if it's not work and that person's just a late person, I have zero sympathy for them. Ha ha ha, they have to watch and I'm glad. But if it's because of work or something, I don't know. We have that happen in our game group. Some people come in late, and one of them texts me every time, "I'm going to be there at 8:30 and make sure you save a game for me." And I'll say, Jason, I'm not going to save you a spot. But then I do anyway because I know when he's coming. He tells me he's going to be there at a certain time. So then it works well. I'll be like, all right, I won't start a game. He's going to be here in 15 minutes. I'll wait for him. And that's the best way to handle that, I think.
Totally agree. I think it's about expectations and communication. Set the expectation up front in whatever way that works for your group. Hey, we start on time, 6:20 p.m., we're playing. If you're here, you've got a game. If you're not, you're going to have to wait. And then the communication card is exactly like Jason. If you let us know when you're going to be there, and this happens in my group too. Oh, we know they're going to be here at 8. Okay, let's play a game that we think will finish before then so we can start new games at that time. Or sometimes somebody might even say, hey, I'll just wait. You all go play that, and I'll wait for this person to show up in 20 minutes, and I'll play a 2-player game with them. We've had that happen too, so spot on there. Garrett asks, do you ever read the introductory flavor text in a rulebook when teaching a new game, or do you just summarize what it's about?
I know what your answer is going to be.
Well, my answer is, and my apologies to all of the fabulous game designers and publishers who work so hard on that fabulous flavor text, but often I will just open up the rulebook, start reading, realize it's a thematic element, and just go theme, and skip it.
Oh, you actually say the words theme?
I do.
Yeah, it depends on the game, but I very rarely read it out loud. I'll say something to the effect of, and in this game, you're knights and you're trying to blah, blah, blah. No one cares. Okay, so here's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're going to get points. That's how I go. I love theme as much as the next person, but I don't normally read it. However, twice in Iceland, when I was teaching games, I started and someone said, can you read the intro text? I want to get into the theme. And I was like, sure, okay.
Wow.
And then in another game, someone said, could you summarize what this game's about? I want to get what the theme is for this game. And I was like, what? Is Iceland full of theme? I'm feeling guilty now. But the one game was Terraforming Mars, and I was like, too bad, blah, 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 or Terraforming Mars. All right, anyhow. Yeah, I get that that's there, but yes, usually I do not like when a game doesn't have that there, because I like to read it myself.
Sure.
But I don't read it out loud. Tony says, as long as board gaming has been a thing, there's always companies trying to repackage old games into something fresh. So, hey, a game like Uno, which is just basically Crazy Eights, and other games where they take like a basic game and do some sort of change to it. So he said he got excited when Claim came out last year, which was a 2-player trick-take game set to rival Fox in the Forest. And then when he looked into it, he found a lot of people said it was basically the 52-card classic German whist with powered suits. If that's the case, what's the incentive for me to get it? And his question is, at what point is a new card game different enough from a game you can already play with a standard pack of playing cards that makes it worth buying? Is new art and a rules tweak enough? Is an extra suit or two of cards enough? Is it just the perceived newness of it? I would like to add to his question, because some more things can be said about some party games like Time's Up and other games that you could just basically make yourself.
Sure. Well, for me, yeah, actually, new art and rules tweaks, that's enough. An extra suit or two of cards, I'm in. I love card games like that, and I know exactly what you're talking about with Claim. It's very reminiscent, but I don't care. I mean, Diamonds, it was a very standard trick-taking game, but it introduced special powers. You can look at all, like, the 6 Nymped, the X Nymped, the 11 Nymped. I own them all, and I'll play them at different times, depending on our mood, because they're just slightly different, or, and that's just enough variation for us to be interested in it. So, for me, personally, it doesn't have to be very different. And just because somebody, likes German whist, maybe they won't like Claim. Maybe people who don't like German whist will really love Claim. And one game doesn't take away from the other. You just have more variety and options. And the market will ultimately decide if the game is worth buying or not. Because if it's worth it, people will buy it. Although in today's market, there's so many games, it's hard to keep up.
I would like to kick Eric Summer off my show and have you, because that's a good answer.
I love Eric. Never.
But I do agree. Yeah, I don't know that I want a repackaged game. But if they change the artwork and they add a little theme or they change a few rules, I don't want to have to say, okay, by the way, just so you know, the Seven of Hearts does this special thing that you don't remember. So, also, Uno and Crazy Eights, just this one I know, they're very different, really.
Mm-hmm.
They just have very different feels. When I played Crazy Eights, I was like, wow, this is like boring Uno. Not that I'm a big fan of Uno. And so, you're going to build on these basic games sometimes. And we'll definitely call them out in our review if we think it's really just blatantly blah, But I did buy a deck. Where did I put that deck? I bought a deck of playing cards in Iceland because they had tons of custom decks, and I got a bacon deck. So each card shows a frying pan with a certain number of strips of bacon in it, and then all the royalty was pigs.
Oh my goodness!
I don't know why I got it. I'm never going to use it, but it was funny. All right, what's the next question?
All right, we'll wrap it up. I think Nico is asking or saying, I'm with this opening. I absolutely love board gaming. I'm with you, Nico. But, I don't get to play as often as I'd like because I don't have any close friends or family who are interested in playing. That is rough. Oh, my heart goes out to you. I get my fix by attending a local game meetup, but I tend towards shyness and have always felt like a bit of a wallflower at big gatherings and kind of just hover around the edges of the established groups or players, trying to find an opportunity to insert into a game, but kind of feeling like an extra wheel. Nico would like to attend a larger board game convention as another experience, but is a little hesitant because of worrying about that wallflower situation on a bigger and more expensive scale. So what are our tips for any convention first-timer to get the most out of a convention, especially if you don't have kind of built-in friends to bring along with you? And are there any cons that we've gone to that seem particularly newcomer-friendly in terms of helping new players and making sure they're welcome to join? Well, I know your answer to this one, Tom.
Well, I gotta be careful because I'm not this kind of person. So I don't know that I'm the best person to give advice to. But I would say scheduled games. Mm-hmm. That seems easier. And look to see if there's a scheduled game. That way, you have to get in the game because you said you would.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really great piece of advice. I would say also a lot of game conventions now have players wanted signs, and people put them on their table because they want a player. So I can understand it's difficult to overcome that kind of hesitation and that wallflower syndrome, but the players wanted sign is up there. You're a player. They are literally telling you in general that they want you to come and join them. I don't want to be dismissive of that hesitation, and similar to you, Tom, right? We're both pretty outgoing individuals, so similarly, maybe not the best person to provide advice here, but I would say take advantage of those players wanted, schedule games, and then in terms of conventions that are newcomer friendly, you might want to look into smaller local conventions. More and more of these are popping up, and it's a way for you to kind of dip into that convention thing without being overwhelmed, and hopefully if it's relatively local without as huge of an expense. That might be one way to go. And then, of course, Dice Tower Con or Dice Tower West, super friendly, super open, really just fun environment with lots of players wanted signs that people would want you to come and join. I thought that was going to be your answer, Tom. I thought you were going to talk about Dice Tower Con.
Oh, yeah. So, Dice Tower Con, Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower Retreat are great places to go if you are afraid. But really, that's the truth of it. I just got to be very cautious because in my mind, sometimes I'm thinking, just go up and jump in a game.
Right.
But I realize that is not how people are wired differently. That's why I'm much more cautious. Here's what I'll say, Nico, this, though. Go to our forums. We have forums. We have Facebook forums. We have Board Game Geek forums. And post your questionnaire, and I bet you'll find people who are just like you, and maybe they have some examples of how they got around this. So, with that being said, it's time to relax. Let me get the lush. All right, here we go.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, folks. Today we're doing a list. I think Eric and I did this, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. And I was looking through and I thought, yeah, this is a good list to do. And I told Suze, and she was like, well, this is kind of a hard list to do. And I was like, no, it's not. Then I made the list, and I was like, oh, yeah, it kind of is. But
I told you so.
Well, here's the thing. I actually relax playing most games, right? I'm not sitting around stressed out. But I tried to pick games that, when I think about them, it's fairly relaxing. Like, I don't feel much stress in them at all. Because there's a lot of games I'm stressed about. Even if it's minor stress. Like, for example, Ticket to Ride. I'm sitting there like, if you block my route, I will throw this in your eyeball.
I think you and I have different scales for stress. Because throwing things in eyeballs sounds pretty stressful to me.
Yes, I'm saying that's what happens. Because most people are like, oh, I read these reports and people are like, I can't play with Jim because Jim and his wife are always helping each other out. I'm like, can I send my wife to that class so that she does that too? Because she keeps cutting me off, and we're great friends most of the time, but not during a Ticket to Ride game. I feel like I'm getting off topic here. But the point is, some games are relaxing.
Some.
Interestingly enough, we only have one crossover. Mm-hmm. However, we did crossover with the People's Choice. You shall see. Here we go.
Number 10.
My number 10 is Herbaceous. Herbaceous is a little bit of a set collection game around basically an herb garden. The card art is by the talented Beth Sobel, and it's just this lovely game designed by Ed Bareff and Steve Finn, the king of the filler game, where you're picking cards, deciding to put one in the middle or keep it to build a set. The theme is peaceful and relaxing. The art is lovely and gorgeous, and it's a fun, relaxing game to play with just about anybody. It's a game I do actually relax when I play Herbaceous. I don't feel any stress about it, and that's why Herbaceous is my number 10.
This is one this is interesting. A lot of people certainly agree with you. This wasn't in the People's Choice Top 10, but it was fairly high up. It was one that got a lot of votes. My number 10 is Quirkle. Now, I don't find Scrabble to be relaxing at all. Mostly because I'm sitting there going, I can't think of a word that comes with these. And when you put the letters out, Sydney, which is the snobby name I have for the person that I'm imagining in my mind, goes, you could have easily made dysentery with those letters. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I don't think of such nasty words like that. Thanks a lot. And I don't know. But Quirkle is kind of like Scrabble, but just colors and shapes. You're just putting them next to each other and forming rows. And I don't know. It just kind of, it's cathartic to put the blocks down. Nice. I like it. Quirkle, my number 10.
Number 9.
My number 9? Oh, I just realized I put this one in the wrong position. Darn it. I missed an opportunity here. Because my number 9 is Red 7. Should have been number 7. Darn it.
No, we don't do that because we stand for what's right.
Okay. Ethics. Got it. Red 7's number 9. Clearly. And number 9 is not on this list at all because it's not relaxing. Red 7 falls into this category of games that I don't stress about because you kind of just have to give in to the game. Red 7's this game where you have multi-use cards, and it can be a win condition, or it can be played to fulfill a win condition. So win condition gets played to the center, and it plays to your little personal tableau to complete the win condition. And the win conditions change constantly, and it's very based on what you're dealt in some ways. And that's what makes it relaxing to me. When I play Red 7, it's simple to learn. You're just tossing cards into the game. You just have to go with the flow because you know that rule is going to change even though you're about to win and that kind of thing. So Red 7, I just give up and give into the game, and that's why it made my number 9.
This is a really good one I didn't think of, but I'm going to agree with you. What a great choice.
Thank you.
My number 9 is Takinoko. Going around as a panda, eating bamboo, putting tiles down. Yeah, there might be a little bit of me trying to move the panda to a spot where you can't get it and building your bamboo shoots up higher. But for the most part, this game is a little bit zen feeling to me. And the panda is probably part of that. Like, how can you be upset when you're moving around such a cute little panda? But I feel like this game is about meeting goals and expectations, and they're just not that hard. Like, I need to do this, I need to do that. All right, I did it. Takinoko, my number 9.
Well, it's certainly a cute one. I can get on board with that.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Scheherazade.
Is this what you say when you're like a magician? And now the rabbit, Scheherazade appears.
Scheherazade. Yeah, Scheherazade is a solo game. And it features just fantastic fairy tale themed art on the cards or the tiles. And in Scheherazade, it's a puzzle. And this is why it made my list. It's just a solo puzzle where you're getting these cards and you're laying them out from left to right, and they have to ascend as you go. And there's rules about switching tiles and how they kind of overlap and how that impacts. And you're trying to ultimately connect paths of different colors across the board when you're done. And there's no setup to this game. You just shuffle it up and start playing. It's very rules light. There are interesting choices as you go, but ultimately it really just feels like I'm working a puzzle. And even though a little bit of stress sometimes when it's not an easy solo game, let's put it that way. It's so pretty and it's so simple to lay out and give it a go. Scheherazade, I like relaxing. I'll throw that on the table a lot when I'm hanging out and just feel like a game. So there you go.
I have not played this one, but I want to say the name. All right, my number 8 is Castles of Caladale. Now, this is a game from Renegade Games. I believe it came out last year. It is a Carcassonne-style game, except you're building this cool castle. But here's what I like about this game. At any point, you can rearrange your castle. So you're just trying to basically get tiles and then build the best castle you can. But you don't have to sit there and go, Carcassonne can be really stressful when you're trying to finish that city. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I need that tile. That tile better come up. I really need that tile. And then you don't get that tile, so you throw it in your eye. But no, instead, Castles of Caladale lets you rearrange over the course of the game. Also, I like how cool the castles look. So that's my number 8.
Yeah, you're rearranging for points. I'm rearranging just to make it look cooler.
Well, that's true. But again, I feel like that doesn't... It's just the ability to rearrange just feels good.
Totally agree. Good choice.
Number 7.
Well, my number 7 is higher up on Tom's list, so I'm just going to go for a relaxing stroll until we get to it.
I got there first. But, okay, anyway, my number 7 is the 10 Days series. 10 days in Africa, 10 days in the U.S., 10 days in Asia, 10 days in America, 10 days in South Africa, 10 days in Europe. I think I got them all. And this is basically...
such a cheat.
Well, 10 days in Africa. That's my thing. I mean, they're all the same game, essentially, just on different maps. And I like it because you're just rearranging tiles, trying to be the first one. It's a little bit of a race to be the first one to make a path through. They also teach, geography, which I kind of like. But this is the kind of game that as we're playing, as we're taking tiles, that you sit back and talk. There's a lot of games I thought about putting on the list in this regard. Like, I sit around with cards and things sometimes and think this, but... This one works really well. 10 days in Africa or USA or Asia or Europe or South America.
Mm-hmm. I've never played these, and you've piqued my interest. I'm going to check them out.
Number 6.
My number 6 is Cribbage. I'm a huge classic game fan. Classic card games are totally my jam. Euchre, Pinochle, Cribbage, Spades, Bridge. I love them all. And I put Cribbage here because 2-player Cribbage is just such... It's a lot like what you're saying about 10 days. I play Cribbage with a friend or a family member, and we just hang around the table and we chat. We shoot the breeze, we play some cards, we move, the pins in the scoring board, and it's just a nice time playing a game together. And I have a lot of good memories of a lot of different games of Cribbage because of the experience I have with my opponent. And even though we're competing, we're just having a lovely shared experience. And I don't get to play cribbage as much as I like to, but I found this app called Cribbage with Grandpas, and it's amazing. You get to make your own grandpa as your opponent, and you can give your grandpa like characteristics, like they're chatty or they're cutthroat or whatever. It's such a fun way to play cribbage. So that's how I've been getting my cribbage fix lately. And cribbage is my number 6.
And I really think you could do a lot of this with, like I said, I was going to put hearts and things like that. You know, these games have that thing where you're just kind of sitting there and having a great time.
Yep.
All right, my number 6 is Ascension, which is kind of weird because it's a deck building game. There's a lot of deck building games, but for some reason, Ascension, I just don't care. I just turn the cards over and be like, I could buy this guy this turn. Meh, I can kill this thing. Meh, I could buy that. That's cool. And I kind of just go with the flow and see what happens. Sure, I try to make some good decisions and buy the right cards for my deck, but I don't. It's not like Dominion where I'm sitting there going, how many provinces are left? Did you buy 2 provinces? How many provinces? Do we have the same number? I only got 7 this turn. I'm going to throw that card in your eye. That type of thing. So Ascension does not have that kind of stress. It's more relaxing. My number 6.
That's an interesting one.
Number 5.
My number 5 is Crisscross. This is
Isn't that an actor?
And no, Tom, no.
Oh.
You're aging yourself right now, just so you know.
Oh.
Crisscross is a roll and write game. Recently released, I think Grail Games has it out in North America, and it's a really simple roll and write game. 2 dice are rolled. You've got a small grid that you're writing symbols in, and ultimately you're trying to get the same symbols in a row or in a column, and each row and each column scores at the end of the game, and you want as many symbols that are the same in a row as you can in a given row or column. But as you roll these dice, the symbols that come up on the dice, you have to draw both, and they have to be drawn next to each other when you place them in your board, which adds a little complexity to trying to make those lines and columns and rows line up. And it's dead simple. Crisscross is, like, from a rules point of view, I just taught you how to play the game. It's so simple. It's components light. I throw it in my bag, and my daughter and I play it while my son's playing soccer, that kind of thing. It's just a fun little roll and write that you can teach to just about anybody, and it's got just enough interest and just enough choice as you're working with these dice to make it, an actual feel-good game to win kind of thing. So yeah, Crisscross, it's a really simple roll and write. It just works in a lot of situations. I don't feel stressed when I play it. I really like it. That's my number 5.
All right. My number 5 is Telestrations, because no one cares at any point if they win this game. There's a lot of party games, I guess, that could fall in this category, but yeah. Telestrations is so much fun because you just draw a picture, and then the next person draws what they think that picture is, and the next person draws what the other person wrote, and you go down. Hilarious fun. My daughter just went to college, and this is one of the games I sent her. And she said that people keep playing it over and over. I've got videos of the stupid pictures people have drawn. I'm very happy with this one because, again, when you're playing Telestrations, I've never seen someone get mad because they lost Telestrations, because I don't know that we've ever kept score. The very definition of a relaxing game.
I totally love this choice. I similarly was thinking Concept. Concept almost made my list for a lot of the same reasons you were talking about Telestrations.
I do like Concept.
It's a good one.
Number 4.
My number 4 is another roll and write game, and it's the classic, or now classic, modern classic, Quicks. Quicks is just, again, it's one of those games, it feels so familiar. It just has that Yahtzee feel. Almost anybody can play it. Its rules are super simple, and you work with just enough luck, and I think this is how I feel about Red 7 too. There's enough luck in the game that you kind of just got to go with the flow with Quicks. I think you have enough decisions playing the odds to make it interesting, but ultimately there's a lot of luck involved, and if you go with the flow, it's super chill to play, and I can play it with a lot of people, and we just have fun, and it's super relaxing. It's another game where you end up talking a lot as you're playing and having a lot of fun conversations as you're kind of centering around a game, and that's why Quicks is my number 4.
Interestingly enough, I just played Quinto which I know is similar to Quicks. I think I like Quinto a little bit better.
Oh, Quinto is one of my all-time favorites. I would not call that game relaxing at all, though.
Oh, but what if you don't care where you write the numbers?
Fair enough.
Also, you'll lose. Okay, my number 4 is Gizmos. And you know why Gizmos it's a newer game. It just came out this year. The reason it's on my list of relaxing games is because I don't care so much if I win because I get so caught up making my machine. I'm like, oh, look at this. Oh, now when I do this action, this is going to happen. But now if I do this action, this happens, which causes this to happen. And I'm like, woo. And at some point, someone's like, excuse me, Marcia won. And I'm like, what? Oh, well, okay, whatever. Let's play again. It just doesn't bother me because I'm having so much fun making that machine, which for some reason lowers my stress. Gizmos, my number 4.
I love those marbles.
Number 3.
My number 3 is The Game. And honestly, Tom, this may not have made my list, except Pandasaurus brought out their edition of The Game, and it reignited my love for The Game. Because it has that fabulous, awesome, gorgeous new Kwanchai Moria art. The Game, for those of you who don't know about it, it's a cooperative game.
Oh my goodness, I hate this so much.
I'm so sorry.
Call the game something else. If I could go back in time and smack this person. All right, sorry. My rant's over. I've never actually even played this game.
I'm glad you got it out of your system, though. You're working cooperatively. It's a deck of 1 to 100. And you're working cooperatively. You've got 2 piles that are going up, and you've got 2 piles that are going down. And you're just taking turns playing cards from your hand, and maybe you throw a 5 and a 12 on a low pile, and you throw a 92 and an 86 on a high pile. There's a little mechanism that lets you walk back a little bit if you go through it. It's hard to win. It's a difficult game to win, but it's cooperative. It's super, super simple to play from a mechanical and rules point of view. And it's one of those things you just end up sitting around the table with a couple of friends, tossing cards in the middle. And now that it has beautiful art, it's even pleasant to look at. The game is super relaxing to play. And that's why it's my number 3.
My number 3 actually has an actual name. It's Tales of the Arabian Nights. This is a storytelling game where you go through and all kinds of weird stuff happens. Now, you have to be relaxed when you play this game. If you're not, you shouldn't play it because literally no one cares what happens to them because it doesn't really matter what you do. You meet a poor beggar on the side of the road. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to befriend them. What? That guy just stabbed me in the back? And now I meet another poor beggar in the city. I'm going to punch him in the face. What? He stabbed me in the back too? And he was actually the king in disguise? And I like it, though, because you just kind of pick a reaction and see what happens. So Tales of Arabian Nights, it's very relaxing because I don't care, because no matter what I try, I'm going to lose.
Yeah, it's a very, very rough, relaxing game, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Number 2.
My number 2 is Dixit. Dixit is a game that uses cards that have fantastical, surreal art. There's a ton of expansions, and every deck just has... I just love looking at the cards because they're so fascinating from an artistic point of view. And, one player's picking a card and giving a hint, and then everybody else picks a card that could be matching that hint, and then they're all shuffled up and laid out, and people vote on which card they think was the real card. It's just easy to play. Everybody I've played with, well, not everybody, but most people I play with really like this. There's so much open to interpretation. You're looking at beautiful art as you go, and it's always kind of fun to see how people's brains work with what they key in on a card. If you say a rainy Sunday, and the variety of cards that come out onto the table at the end are always fun to look at. And it's another game where you kind of keep score, and sometimes you kind of don't care because you're just having fun playing cards and guessing which one was the real one. And that is Dixit, my number 2.
I did not put Dixit because I take this game seriously. Well, not really, but I'm trying to think of clever clues. But it is relaxing. My number 2 was Suzanne's number 7, and that's Tokaido. This game is the very essence of Zen. You are moving these warriors. No, travelers. Sorry, not warriors. I don't know why I said warriors. You move these travelers down a path. You can move down a path as far as you want, but then you can't go back. So you can move slowly or you can move more quickly to get stuff. You're basically getting pieces of panoramas of like backgrounds, which look beautiful. And you can go slowly at your own pace and get stuff. And every time I play this, at the end, I'm just like, what a peaceful game. Tokaido.
I'm relaxing just thinking about it.
And finally, number 1.
And my number 1 is Lanterns from Renegade Games. And Foxtrot Games, I think. Lanterns is a tile laying game. And each side of the tile has different lantern colors, and you're placing them, trying to kind of match sides, and then you collect lantern tokens, and then you turn them in for points. A little bit of set collection and tile laying, all tossed in together. On the table, it looks really pretty as you see all these colors blending and kind of this idea of lanterns floating in the water and collecting together. I love that idea and that theme in general. But what makes Lanterns work, it's a solid game. And it's a competitive game. But what makes it work and what makes it relaxing to me is that everybody gets things every turn. When you lay a tile, whatever side is facing an opponent on any of your, across or to your left or right, they will also get lantern tokens based on the side of the tile that's facing them. And I love that element of lanterns. And you're going around, you're placing tiles. Don't get me wrong. There's some hard choices that you have to make and that give and take. But that's what makes it kind of cool and relaxing. It feels like a communal experience, even though we're competing with each other. So all of that put together makes Lanterns my number 1 relaxing game.
I still haven't played Lanterns.
No way!
I don't know what. It's just one of those games that somehow has missed my range. I think because everyone else played it in a group and then they just moved on.
It's such a shame. I mean, however will you live without playing a specific game, Tom?
I still got a couple months left. So my number 1 is Cottage Garden. I like the whole tile laying, Tetris laying type thing that Uwe Rosenberg does. This is the first in a trilogy he did, Cottage Garden, Autumn, something, and Spring Meadow. Whatever.
Indian Summer, which is autumn. Anyway, it's confusing. But Cottage Garden, I like the building the Tetris shapes and putting them in. Cottage Garden feels like it's the least stressful of all of them. I'm just, I got a tile. Does it fit here? Yeah, it does. Did I finish my thing? Yeah, I did. Oh, I'm still missing a square? I'll stick a dead cat in this spot. I know they're not dead. They're sleeping. Napping, Tom.
I have always said dead cat, and I will continue to do so. Again, folks, I don't kill cats. I don't even wish death on cats, except in this particular game, in which case they fertilize my garden. No, I know they're sleeping, but the fact is, this game is just very, very zen-like for me. It was an easy pick. The other ones are good too, Indian Summer and Spring Meadow, but they're a little bit more stress as you're trying to fit the pieces in. This one, I'm kind of just like, yep, I finished another square. Cool. Look, I finished another one. I don't know what it is. Cottage Garden was my number 1.
What did the people say, Tom?
Okay, number 10, Sushi Go, drafting. I don't know how any drafting game is relaxing. I love Sushi Go, but oh my goodness, I'm always stressed. Number 9, Barren Park. I thought about putting this instead of Cottage Garden, but Barren Park, again, is a little more stressful for me.
Yeah.
8, Splendor. I could see that. Take chips, pay chips, take chips, pay chips. 7, Onirim. I don't know. I've never played this game. This is that Z 1 to 2 player game.
I've played a ton of it. I think it's pretty stressful myself. I'm impressed that game relaxes people. More power to you.
Number 6, Sagrada. This one makes sense. You're just putting dice into a stained glass window. Yeah, I can see that. Number 5, Azul. That game where people are forcing you to take tiles? Sure. Number 4, Takinoko. Hey, I said that. Number 3, Tokaido. We both said that. Number 2, Carcassonne. What?
Yeah.
You've never had someone take your big city? But I do get that people want to build the big tiles and lay everything out. And then number 1, Patchwork, which I guess fits in my Cottage Garden thing. I think people really like that laying tiles down. It's easy to do, and it feels extremely satisfying when you finish something. I almost put
solid list of games. Whether I find them relaxing or not, that's a solid list of games.
Yeah, Feast for Odin is not on my list.
Goodness, no.
Well, here's the thing, though. All joking aside, I really get de-stressed playing most games. Yes, there are some games that have very high levels of stress, but for the most part, playing games makes me happy. Playing games takes me off of sometimes very real-life things that happen. And it's a bit of an escape. It's not like drugs or something that, escape that makes you forget everything. But what it does is, for a little short while, I'm just having a good time. And I think it's one of the best things that games do.
Beautifully said.
Well, that's the end of a relaxing episode. Next time, I believe Mandy and Suzanne take back over, and we will be back to normal, but only briefly because Essen is on the horizon. I can smell it. When I say smell it, I smell those donor sandwiches, which I do so like.
Waffles.
I got to lose some more weight before Essen comes. All righty, folks. Well, thanks so much, and thanks, Suzanne, for coming on and doing a top 10. Very exciting.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Tom.
All righty, folks. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 574, was recorded on September 20th, 2018. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I are back with our top 10 convention experiences. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Siri. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Our cocktail party with Russian monarchs provided by Among the Czars. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, The Snakes Cast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The Geek All-Stars, The Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, and Board Game Breakfast at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
Okay, Tom, I gotta find out. What was the best thing you ate in Iceland?
Well, we went to a super fancy restaurant that I don't know what anything we ate there was. You're like, oh, that's good. But the chocolate bars. They had so many different chocolate bars I never had before. And I was like, well, I need to test these out for culture purposes. So there was one called Corny Chocolate or something like that. It was close to granola, but I really did enjoy that. For regular food, the ice cream there was terrific. Oh, you want me to get off desserts? They had good fish, but that ice cream, I really liked it.
Oh, so envious.